Welcome to Buses, Benches, and Baseball, presented by DimTroduction.
Who? Never heard of him.
Who's this guy?
It's not real!
Now here is your host, Tim Dillard.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world's #1 most unneeded minor league baseball podcast in the world. It's Buses, Benches, and Baseball, and I am your host, Tim Dillard. Thank you for finding your way to the show. Glad you're here. When you get a chance, please share this show with your friends and maybe even the people that are not your friends. That may be better. The show is on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. Also, be sure to write an unscathing 5-star review on those platforms. And I know. It seems like the cashier handing a receipt, asking for you to click on a code or scan something to fill out a survey. I get it. So there's no pressure. But there's some pressure. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. But before we do, let's have a word from a potential sponsor. Hi, I'm Tim Dillard. You may remember me from such minor league baseball teams as the Beloit Snappers, the Nashville Sounds, and of course the always intimidating Brevard County Manatees. Well, my 18 years in professional baseball would have been way shorter if my wife got her way, but I was able to stay healthy and be in shape, air quotes, thanks to two and very important things. Number one, of course, ibuprofen. I want to say thank you, ibuprofen. And also, training every offseason at D1 Sports. D1 Sports training is some of the most elite in the Northern Solar System and have helped over 100 NFL draft picks and thousands of professional, college, high school, all athletes of all shapes and sizes and ages, and with over 100 locations across the country, the next step of strength and agility could be at your fingertips. And speaking of those fingertips, use those to type in d1training.com to learn more about how D1 Sports can elevate your health.
Stay tuned for a DimStructional.
Take the little end and stick it in the big end, and you know what?
This is how we do it. How exactly is a rainbow made? It just does.
Welcome to the DimStructional segment. It's basically me sharing something that I learned somewhere throughout my career. This one in particular is about playing pepper. That's right, plain old pepper. Pepper is probably one of the best baseball warm-up drills that's ever existed. It's where a batter hits a grounder to a fielder, and the fielder then pitches a strike back to the batter, and so on and so forth. It's a super simple game to learn, and it helps you get better at baseball. I mean, it's similar to Legos. I'd say pepper is for ages 4 to 99. Why? Because if you can move at all, you can play pepper. Doesn't matter if you're a position player or a pitcher, playing pepper can help you. And here are the benefits. For the fielders, you're getting fielding practice, whether it's forehand or backhand, and you're getting experience with different hops, different spins, and also working on transfers from glove to the hand, and of course, intermediate throws, and the footwork when you're throwing the strike back to the batter. And for the batter, pepper will teach you hand-eye coordination, and that will benefit your hitting, of course. And you're also going to be gaining back control. Back control is important to know exactly where you're going to hit the ball and how you're going to hit the ball, which is instrumental in trying to get better at hitting. Overall, it's just a perfect way to either warm up for practice or get ready for a game. But what makes it great is that you can play with just 2 people, or you could have 10. Doesn't matter. And it doesn't take up a lot of room to be able to play. And you can make up some rules too, if you want. Like if someone catches the ball hit in the air, then you get to bat. And whoever is in the front of the line gets to hit if the batter swings and misses at a good pitch. And if there's a bad throw, that fielder will move down the line. And there's like a dozen more rules you can implement. If you want to hear more about that, you can feel free to message me and I'll give you some more ideas on the fun ways to play pepper. But don't take my word for it. Just listen to Johnny Bench and Dusty Baker talking about pepper.
All right, come on, let's have a little pepper. Here we go. Right here. There we go. That way, Debbie. Good play now. A little timing, coordination. It's good for the hitter, too. Good fielding practice. That way, Sherman. Fielding and throw, one motion. There we go. That's the way, smooth. Go down to the ball, pick it up. Oh, a little spin. Oh, a little style there, huh, Sherman? Been reading that book on style again? Uh-oh, breaking ball, I saw it. That way. Good play. There's Sherman. Louis. I don't say you caught that one, Louis, with the chicken in the way. Chicken. Pepper's not a game of win or lose. Pepper's a game to develop your skills. You got to give everybody a chance. You're a bird, not a hog.
This has been a pointless DimStructional. Now it's time for a Mound visit.
My guest this week on the Mound visit is longtime baseballer, former catcher, fellow Tennessean, Caleb Joseph. Caleb, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, you got it, Timmy. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. Last time I saw you, we were in Costco, and I think that was that last year.
Absolutely. I was walking by to get some of the sweets that typically have at night, and I saw this guy that looked vaguely familiar, kind of like the guy that Tom Hanks turns into when he's running in Forrest Gump.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Castaway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take Forrest Gump. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show, man. It is it's more geared towards like the minor leagues. I know you spent a lot of time in the big leagues, but what's interesting about your story, you get drafted 2008 by the Baltimore Orioles. 7th round, you kind of get thrust into it and you think, man, I'm going to get to the big leagues right away, which you did, but it took you a while. It took you, parts of 7 seasons to finally crack the major league roster there?
Oh, yeah. It was an interesting ride. I remember being drafted the year after Matt Wieters, who was a first-round pick.
Oh, yeah.
Like, really, of all teams to be drafted as a catcher, did it really need to be that team? So you're trying to think of ways to get up there and be a backup, or you're trying to think of ways to really impress 29 other teams. And I felt like I was on the fast track. I went straight to low A, which my brother was drafted the same year by the New York Yankees, and he had to go to the Gulf Coast League, which, Timmy, I don't know if you went to the Gulf Coast League or not, or the Arizona, whatever, like
rookie
initial
ball, yeah.
Oh man, like rookie ball. They said that was killer. So I was lucky enough to get thrown past that league. Yeah. And then the next year, 2009, I went straight to high A, which skipping low A, I felt like, oh man, this could end up going really quick. And then I got to double A in 2010. And that's when the parking brake was not only put on, it was jammed shut. So I got stuck in double A.
You were breaking records, weren't you?
I broke the games played record in double A for the Bowie Bay Sox, which is the Eastern League. Not a record you want. Nice to be known for something, but that's how long I was in double A. And then ironically, I finally get to triple A 2014. And I only spent really 3 weeks there because Matt Wieters, who I was just talking about, he gets hurt. And I was only in AAA for like 3 weeks and then bam, up in the big leagues. So the irony is I played 4 years in AA. Most guys play like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in AAA. I played 4 years in AA. Didn't think I was ever going to get out. Played 3 weeks in AAA and then bam, in the big leagues.
And it's different if you're a pitcher, or if you're an outfielder and you kind of get stuck or whatever and you got to grind it out. But being a catcher, I mean, you're in it. That's a tough position.
It was literally Crash Davis. It was basically the old bitter guy with a bunch of young, fresh guys that were throwing fuego all over the place. And yeah, I got to know that league really well. Spent a lot of time in those different cities. I know the best place to get breakfast in all of those cities for under $8 because that's pretty much what we tried to live on. It's unbelievable when you tell people that I was making like $700 every 2 weeks, and they can't believe it. I mean, I didn't get a comma in a paycheck until I got to the big leagues. Like never. I never even had a comma in AAA.
Well, you weren't there long enough in AAA to get one. Here's what they don't tell you too. If you go to spring training, you go to big league camp. And they give you your meal money in big league camp, right? They tax that, and then they take it out of your first check when you make it to, which is usually AAA. So, like, there were guys that were getting their first AAA check, but they had all of big league camp, and they opened their check. I remember we had a catcher, Carlos Corporon. He opened his first AAA check. You remember Corp? Hey, he got $90.
It was shocking too. Oh, what in the world? I mean, and those Major League meal money envelopes, those were really nice. Yeah. That's when you think you're making it because it's all cash too, and you're going, this is it.
Yeah.
And you go to AAA, and your first check is $90.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I think it was 2007. Do you remember when I was a bullpen catcher? I came for like 3 weeks for the Nashville Sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. You came over, you're at Lipscomb University, and we would hang out in the bullpen. And I remember one time you were like, man, I would love to do this. I'd love to just be a bullpen catcher. And I was like, you're legit. You're catching R.A. Dickey 80-mile-an-hour knuckleballs without wearing a mask. I'm like, I think you got the skills, guy.
Either skills or lack of intelligence. Try and do that. Maybe that they say it's with the tools of ignorance. Maybe I was just born to be a catcher. I wasn't smart enough to realize that that's a dumb idea. Yeah. I was thinking about this. I think it was the first game. I was all nervous. It was at Greer Stadium, the old Greer Stadium in Nashville. Yeah. I grew up there as a kid. I went there. My grandfather had season tickets. I mean, I've been going there literally since I was born. And to kind of be on the field, it was my big leagues. It was the version of my big leagues. At that moment, I was a college kid. And I remember, getting the uniform or whatever and being out there and just thinking, I've made it. This is it. I'm going to make $18 catching bullpens for this game, but this is it. This is my big leagues.
That's all you got paid was $18.
Well, after taxes and the bologna sandwich that I had in between the game.
Yeah.
I remember standing on the line for the national anthem, and I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea that there's pranks and guys are funny down there, and the bullpen is the place to be for all the jokes, right? I had no idea. So I'm just standing there, stiff as a board, and all of a sudden my hat goes flying onto the field. And it's like right next to the foul line. Somebody, I don't know who it was, somebody had kind of reached back and grabbed it and just flung it. And so I look like an idiot. It's my first game. Who's this kid? No hat. His hat's over there. I'm just embarrassed. I'm going, uh-oh, these guys, they got tricks. And that same night, Nelson Figueroa had thrown about 8 innings. And out of nowhere, the phone rings, maybe like a 3-1 game. Out of nowhere, the phone rings in the bullpen. And I'm jumping up, like putting my stuff on because I haven't done anything. It's my first game, and I haven't caught a single bullpen yet. And it's like the 8th inning, and they call down, get somebody ready. And this guy was massive. I think he was of Latin descent, but absolutely massive. I think he was a closer. Pena, maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe. So if you've ever been to Greer Stadium, the way the bullpens are situated, it's
on the field.
Yeah, on the field, and they're angled. So, like, Timmy, you were throwing and I was catching. If a ball got past me, it could roll down into the corner, the left field corner, and ricochet off or whatever.
Yeah, ends up on the field. Yeah.
Yeah, incredibly embarrassing.
Everyone calls time. Everyone stares at
like, figure it out, guys. You're supposed to be professional. So I'm already scared to death of that, knowing that's happening. And I didn't realize that from my vantage point, the catchers, that when you're looking at the pitcher, all you see is fans. Yeah. And fans sometimes wear white shirts and they wear stuff that blends in with the color of the baseball. So, A, I can't really see as well as I did 5 hours before when there was nobody there. B, I'm nervous. C, this guy gets ready to go and he is needing to get ready fast. So he's like, get down. So, I barely got my mask on, my glove barely on my hand, and I'm doing all this stuff. And he throws a pitch pretty high. I jump up to kind of catch the ball. The ball clips the top part of my webbing. It has a ton of velocity on it. It pulls the webbing backwards, which makes the glove slide right out of my hand. It goes flying onto the field. They had to call time. I had to go get my glove, not the ball, the glove. I don't know if you remember that, but I will never forget.
Your first game, you lose your hat and you lose your glove.
I thought, this is my big leagues, and I will be fired after day one.
You know what? I forgot about when guys used to do that. You take your hat off for the anthem and you have it, and you're kind of focused on the flag and you're focused on the game and what's, being sung. And then all of a sudden someone just reaches, grabs your hat and throws it. There's just guys that would do that.
Yes, that is the jokes and the stuff that guys in the bullpen would do. And you don't know until you know.
But dude, the experience that you were able to get. Now, I mean, I'm not knocking college. College is great, but you're catching college kids. Now,
Right.
Suddenly you're in AAA, even though you're still in college, you're catching some guys that have big league time. They have the velocity, they have the tight sliders, knuckleballs. And for you to have that kind of experience, do you think that maybe gave you an advantage in some way as you started climbing the ladder and working with some of the older guys?
Yeah, I believe so. I remember being able to catch even a guy like Derek Turnbow. Might remember him with Milwaukee. Just he went to the same high school as I did.
Gomer? Did he really?
Yeah. So that was fun because he had big time velocity. And we're talking 15, 20 years ago, which 97 was big time velocity 20 years. And that's what Turnbow had. And he didn't really know where it was going. So that it forces you to focus to get better. It was great getting to know a lot of those pro guys. And obviously you, Timmy, and a guy named Les Walren. I'm sure you might remember him. Les pitched in the Cubs system for a while. But I caught him quite a bit, and he was a lefty, and the kind of the crafty lefties. And sometimes those crafty lefties can almost be the hardest ones because their movement is so late, and they're really good at just making everything look like it's tunneling and it's going to be in the same spot, and then it darts. And that's what you had to really get used to as a non-professional catching some of these big league guys was the late action. Because you're playing in high school, you're playing in those type of kind of summer leagues, you kind of see the curveball pretty quickly, but then you go right from that league to professional guys, and especially guys that have big league time. It's like every pitch looks the same, and then where it just kind of disappears. And so being a catcher, being able to experience that long before you're being paid to catch it, I did feel like it gave me an advantage.
Or at least it helps you kind of expect, like, this is what I know is coming, and it's going to be more consistent. You may catch a guy that's filth in A ball, or maybe a couple of guys in AA, but at the AAA level, these are grown men. Some of them have kids. They're not jokes, and their whole livelihood is geared around their stuff being super nasty.
Yep, I totally agree. They were doing it for a living, and it was serious business. And then the fun part was getting to talk to them and learn their lingo and learn how they talked and how they wanted certain pitches to move. And you just feel like you got a little bit on the inside, and you feel like you got a head start above all the other guys, where you could come in and start talking the game a certain way that that's how they talk, or even just the terminology on how they say certain pitches. I mean, Timmy, it's every team has kind of a different set of the terminologies that people like to use, little one-liners and all that stuff. I remember catching Les Walren I was talking about in kind of that college time that we were just speaking of. And then fast forward like 10 years, I faced him in AA. He was in AAA when I was catching him, and Les was, we were kind of going the opposite direction. I ended up facing Les Walren in AA when he was with the Reading Phillies. That was really odd because to me, he was old when I was catching him when I was in college. And then many years later, baseball's such a small world when you get into that professional ranks. But
you're in such a good spot too at Lipscomb. I mean, and for people out there that don't know, our listeners, when it's the off season, you got to find other players, and you work out with them. You got to play catch with them, train with them. And it was R.A. Dickey that got me training over at Lipscomb for several off seasons. We go play basketball in the game gym, and then we go into a very dimly lit practice gym, and we throw off this plastic mound. And here's Caleb Joseph that's absolutely just snagging my stuff out of the air. Made me feel like I wasn't doing very well.
you were doing nasty stuff. I just must have been feeling it that day.
Yeah. But I remember we had like a clump of guys that would kind of come and go. And that's just kind of the way you did. And when I was in high school, there was a guy that got drafted by the Yankees, a left-handed pitcher, but he would come back to high school and I would catch him. He was a lefty, and I'd never caught a lefty that threw past, 90 miles an hour. Instantly made me better. Teaches you how to get behind the ball at a young age and make everything look like a strike. Moving forward a little bit, you bounced around as far as, Double A, you finally get to the big leagues. And I mean, you had a great run, right? Like parts of 7 years in the big leagues?
Yeah, it was great. Looking back, it didn't end the way that I wanted, but who gets to really decide that in baseball? I mean, very few get to say, I'm done. This is how I want to go. Very few, maybe 5% if I had to guess. But looking back, being a little kid from Franklin, Tennessee that kind of grew up in Nashville, to be able to say I got, parts of 7 years in the big leagues, I'm thrilled with it, very fortunate, very blessed, very content with it. And it took a while. I learned a lot by that journey, just minor leagues, being able to learn how to deal with failure, to deal with unmet expectations, to deal with so many different things that you have to figure out how to be financially responsible, how to go find a job and be a real human and not be above working for UPS in the off season because you don't have any money and you need to go work, and nobody cares that you played, Double A and you were an all-star last year. You got to go find a job and go put your big boy pants on and go to work, like everyone else in the world. Stuff like that those lessons are invaluable. I think this is a crazy story. Even my debut story, I had been really closely connected to Ben Zobrist, who obviously all three of us are buddies. And Ben had been really mentoring me through that process of staying with it. I had just been married 2013 before the season. That was a really interesting year in Double A because I was the player of the year as rated by some of these publications or whatever. I hit 22.
Didn't you win a home run derby too?
Yes.
Ha! I did remember that.
You got it. I beat Steve Sousa. I think he let me win because he felt bad because it was my fourth year in the league, and he was like, "Hey, we need to give the old grandpa, an award." Like any award you could possibly get, like I got that year and couldn't move up, and so that's what I started really thinking. Okay, like I've literally done everything the best, and I can't even get to AAA. We're not talking about the big leagues, just AAA. Yeah. And Ben Zobrist had walked so closely with me through that kind of area of my career. And ironically, I finally, like we talked about, finally get to the big leagues, 2014. We're playing in Tampa, and I don't hit the first inning because obviously I'm hitting ninth. We go 3 up, 3 down. My debut, the first moments on a major league field, Tim, I'm catching. I shake the umpire's hand, which is Dana DeMuth back then. I walked up, shake Dana DeMuth's hand, catch the 8 or 9 pitches or whatever, throw the ball down to second base. I don't throw it in the center field. That's huge W.
That's a big one.
And everything was happening so fast. It didn't even register who was hitting first. We went over the lineup, who we were going to face, but it just didn't register. I look over, and it's Ben Zobrist. And Ben Zobrist is walking to the plate. And I just thought, this is unbelievable. I had spent so many hours basically boo-hooing and woe is me and mule lipping to him about, I'm never going to get a chance and I need to quit. And he just was kind of like the old papa and kept cheering me on. And to have that moment with Ben was pretty divine in our opinion. And it was just a really cool completion of the circle for kind of how baseball can take you in so many different directions.
I mean, what you're talking about is something that's above and beyond chance. And in a game like baseball that's built around failure, we can all tell the worst games. We can all tell the failures that we've had. Even if you're in Little League, you have bad games, you have a bad season, like you just need some big moments that you can go back and look at and go, I can achieve this. Baseball is so hard. It's such a difficult life that a lot of times people just see the big leagues, they see it on TV and everything's, the lights are brighter and everything's easier. And they don't know the iceberg of hardship that's led to get to that peak where everyone can see it. And I think a big part of that is people have to come and run alongside you at times to help you. I know that R.A. Dickey was that for me my first year in AAA, and I can probably name a dozen others that I have, leached onto at different points in my career till you reach a point where you've been around long enough, which you played for 14 seasons. Like eventually you do become that older guy where people are going, they're looking for you of going, hey, can you help me in certain areas? So yeah, you just kind of pass it along.
No doubt. Yeah, that you have to have those type of people around you, unless you're superhuman, and I've only been around none of them. So you just need a great support system. I mean, you're going to fail. It's not if, it's when. It's when the game hits you in the mouth. And I think that was one of the biggest shockers getting into pro ball was I had never really failed the way that I failed in pro baseball. I mean, I'm sure you probably feel the same way. If you're playing professional baseball, you've probably been one of the better players on your teams really since you were playing in Pee-wees. So
high school, college, like you're probably one of the, the big honchos, but then you get into pro ball and you realize you're just a minnow. You're just a small fish.
Oh yeah. I was hitting third on the college team and the most feared hitter, my first pro game, I was hitting eighth. That sounds crazy, and who cares? But even just like seeing your name eighth, it takes a minute to like process that. So I'm not the best hitter on this team.
Well, you probably until that time you've batted in the first inning your entire life.
Yeah,
you get to pro ball. It's the first time you've batted like in the second or third inning. You're like, this is absurd.
You might have been a starting pitcher, and now you're like, I don't know, or you're in the bullpen. All of these things. And to have people that have been there and experience seeking out trustworthy experience, that was I knew that was number one. And you know what, Tim? It started with catching you guys long before I was even a professional. Like you start to soak up the knowledge of everyone knows what it feels like when it's going great. It's when you get hit in the mouth. How do you respond? And I needed people that had been hit in the mouth multiple times and were still standing. To help me, because I'm staggering and I want to go into the corner and let Mike Tyson just finish me off. That's what I want to do, but I need somebody to, help me and pick me up and, dust me off a little bit.
In the minor leagues, you just feel overlooked. And it may be a little bit different now. You have social media, so you can see all these clips of what's happening in A-ball or AA. I think you can even watch some of them on TV with like the MLB package. But there's a time where you just felt like you're playing in front of maybe 100 people. The double header starts at 11 o'clock at night. There's nobody there. It's raining a little bit. And the whole time you're sitting there going, what am I doing? Am I doing anything that matters? You just want to feel like you matter when you're playing, especially when things aren't going great. But when people kind of put a spotlight on you or check in on you, it can be the glimmer of hope that you need. And we talked about Dickey. Dickey thought he was on his way out. He thought he was done playing. Gets with the Sounds, doesn't get called up with the Brewers, ends up getting, big leagues with a couple of teams, ends up winning Cy Young in 2012. I mean, it's just, you don't know what's going to happen in this game. And I think the trick is you just got to figure it out and keep going every single day.
Got to do it. Got to keep going.
Got to do it.
Some people told me, they said, look, as long as you have a jersey on your back, you have a chance. And when you're in AA on a 9-hour bus ride at 4 a.m, you're sitting there going, I don't have a chance. You guys don't understand. Like, I know you're saying this, but I can't move up. I can't do this. Things can happen so quickly. And I would say, tell me what your opinion is on this, Timmy, but like, I feel like 25% of the guys in the big leagues are probably just going to be there no matter what, whether they're drafted as a first round pick. They're just destined to be there because they're just that much better than everybody. Your Sotos, your Machados, your Otanis. Okay. I think 25% that start playing professional baseball, they just will like never, ever give up. Yeah. They will never give up, and they're going to almost will it into existence where no matter what, they won't stop. Even if it's only a month or 2 months or 1 year, they're going to make it. They're going to do it. Yeah. I think the large majority of people you see in the big leagues are guys that don't want to give up, They've got quite a bit of talent, but they almost hit it at the right spot. Whether it's just some sort of where they were drafted, the organization, the need, maybe it was an injury, maybe it was a trade, something just like created a path so that happened.
Something out of your control, right?
Right.
Like, I think the big thing is how little control you have in this game.
Right.
You know, I think we always talk about, if you remember Eric Almonte, he was supposed to be the next Derek Jeter, got drafted by the Yankees. And did he ever play shortstop for the Yankees? No. he would DH for us in AAA years later. So that's the kind of thing like you don't have any control over. And then you look back at a career and you can sit there and go, it wasn't supposed to happen any other way. You know, I wish I'd have had 10 years in the show. Didn't happen. That's why I'm doing this minor league podcast. But but the people that I've come in contact with, the things that I learned, the conversations I was able to be a part of, the relationships, I mean, it's so invaluable to help you grow. And there's people that fight against that sometimes. And then there's also people that just absolutely embrace it. And I think the people that absolutely embrace it can sit there and look back at a career and measure success differently than what most people do.
No question. And you know what? You're not going to say it, but for your listeners, like I will tell you, like you are the epitome of that person. I remember 2000.
Talking about me?
Yes. In terms of like looking back and not pressing against it, like you're the epitome of the player that made the most of every opportunity where you were, and you weren't salty, and you didn't think, oh, like. It did not come across as I just want to get to the big leagues. Like you were here and there for a reason, and you took advantage of those reasons. And the players that I played against or with that were teammates with yours, they said that, and it was not surprising to me because I know you. But I do remember 2019. You might not remember this, but I was demoted. At 34 years old. I had been in the big leagues with.
You're in Reno, right?
Yeah, for like 6 straight years. And before I knew it, I was in the minor leagues. I hadn't been in the minor leagues in 6 years.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a shock. And Nashville comes into town. And Timmy, you're bouncing around like it's your first day in AAA. You're bouncing around. And I'm just going, I remember looking because I was in a bad spot. That was probably more difficult than the 4 years in AA, was being an established big leaguer and then going back. That was the hardest year of my career. But I do remember trying so hard not to be that old, bitter, grumpy guy in AAA because nobody likes those guys. They're drainers. They just drain the life right out of you.
Yeah.
Remember, it was almost like I needed a reminder, a visual reminder, because Nashville comes into town and this guy's bouncing around. How old were you at the time? Like, you're like 40?
I don't know, 36 or 8.
Yeah, 41. And he's like he's 22 years old. And, and this is probably like year 10 or something in AAA. I mean, you were that guy, and it was infectious to be around. And if any of your listeners or watchers, be that person on any team that you're on. Good things happen to people that have that type of attitude. I just believe it. You want those people on your team, those guys that are picking you up, that are loose, that show up ready, willing to do whatever it takes. I feel like those guys are very successful, and Tim, you're a very successful human. So it was fun to watch from abroad.
In Reno, everyone else stays out really late. So I just looked like I was bouncing around faster than everybody else. No, I loved showing up to the field, and it wasn't always that way. And if you fight against that, it's everything's going to be tough. But when you start realizing it's really not about you and it's just about the experience and the people that you're with, I mean, it just changes everything. There's so many times I wish I was in the big leagues, but then I'm in the minor leagues and I come across a teammate, a former teammate, a friend, whatever it is, and I have a chance to really talk to them and get to know them and maybe hear their story, and almost like a counseling session, right? You got the skull sessions of whatever it is, and you don't know, that may be the exact moment that something changes it for them or changes for yourself, and you can't really control where you're at. That's what I loved about baseball so much, because in life you feel like, well, I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Like right now, you're probably like, why am I on this podcast? I should be doing something else. But baseball is very simple. They tell you what to wear, they tell you where to go, and who your friends are. And so That to me was very simple. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be in life, and these are supposed to be the people I'm with. And so it was very simple. I'm a simpleton, you know this. And so I'm like, this is how I'm going to roll. I think a lot of times people aren't that accepting of it. I know I wasn't early in my career, but just being okay of this is where my feet are at, and these are the people I'm with. And it's really that simple.
It is. And I think that's the key to being able to look back and enjoy what seems like is going to be forever. Very short little career. Because I tell people all the time now, I did not wish it away. I did not, I'm not going to say not focus. I mean, I was very appreciative of every single day that I was putting a uniform on, knowing that it was going to eventually stop at some point. Father Time, he's unneeded, right? But I didn't quite realize how quickly it really does happen. It really is a snap of a finger. The old saying, the days are long, but the years are short, is so true. It's so true with parenting, but it's so true with a baseball career as well. I mean, those bus rides, my goodness, like I don't know if I can get on a bus for longer than 45 minutes. I'm just scarred, like the cramps, the leg cramps. I mean, who am I talking to? You, goodness. Or you get to AAA and then you have the 6 a.m. flights where you get in the middle seat, and you just I think I might rather want to sit in the bathroom from Salt Lake to wherever we're going, Reno, Tacoma. But those days are long. But then you snap a finger and it's over. And the perspective, man, I wish I would have had that earlier in my career. Just the perspective of, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't like it. I don't want to be here, but this is it. Make the most of it. I've figured that out a little bit later on. I wish I would have had it earlier.
That's anybody that ages is going to have better perspective than somebody younger than them. But I think baseball just gives you, what somebody would learn in 5 years in the real world, we'll say, that you get that in like one season of baseball. Like you think about all the people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and then your family for 6 or 7 months. And there's all these perspectives and there's all these different conversations. And suddenly you get life experience condensed into, one season that most people would take years. And then you times that by several years. Now, suddenly you get on the other end of that and you start having kids, and then you can't outlook the perspective. I mean, my kids, that's one of my jobs as a parent, besides teach them good music, which that is a priority in our house. You got to know the good songs, is just to pump that perspective in constantly. If my kid goes out, he's 9 and he strikes out in a game, I'm just like, dude, everybody strikes. I play the long game. Like here, I'm going to keep pumping perspective into you so much that you're going to go, I'm going to go out there and do my best. And when I fail, I'm going to be okay with that because I'm one more at bat better. I'm one more game better. I've gotten better even though the results aren't where they are yet. And you play that long game. To me, that's the perspective. Let's get better every day at whatever your craft is. And to know that not everything hinges when you're 9, when you're 12, when you're 15. But that's what baseball gave me, is just overwhelming perspective on life.
No doubt. Whether it's connecting with other people from other countries that don't speak your language, whether it's knowing when to show up on the mound with a heavy hand or a gentle touch, just reading the room. Yeah. Being forced to be around 24, 25, 28 different personalities, just absolutely. I really wouldn't trade it for anything, because you can, for the most part, walk into a situation and know how to interact, know how to get around, because you're so comfortable around so many different types of situations, or people are always going through different stuff. And I used to find that interesting, to go try and learn about the Japanese culture when we had a Japanese player, or ask them about what happens in Korea, when I had Korean pitchers, or, the Dominican, and learn about these places. So you can just become educated. But, absolutely. Perspective is, no question, the most important thing. We're doing the same thing with our kiddos. But if you're an aspiring, high school or collegiate player, or even professional player, and you're listening to this, to even have the ability to think about how you want to lay it out. I didn't even have that. We didn't have podcasts. I'm trying to read like baseball almanac. So this is great. Like, so somebody might be saying, well, okay, well, how do I actually do that, Tim? Like, that's great. Like a perspective. From a hitter's perspective, I would look at a 10 at-bat increment if you're trying not to be really result driven and just looking at all of the external factors. Don't go game to game. If you go game to game, that's hard. I mean, getting a hit in a game is hard. It's just hard. There's days when you're going to go for 4. There's some days you're going to go 2 or 3 for 4 as a hitter. Look in 10 at-bat increments and judge it over the 10 at-bats. Obviously, you get 3 hits out of the 10 at-bat increments, which might take you, right at 3 games, maybe 2.5. Then you can really start to judge kind of where you're at and what those 10 look like. And of course, pitcher, same thing. I mean, you'd know better than me if it's an inning, if it's a road trip, if you're a reliever, maybe it's 2 out of 3. But stuff like that, I think, is massively important because I would every single pitch of every single at bat was like this game, right? And I had like a million different check marks. And in baseball, like you said, there's going to be a lot more red minuses than green check marks, at least on the batter side. Pitchers, you guys are lucky. That makes me angry. Let's talk about this. The hitter success rate's like 23%. Well, in my career, it was 23%. The good ones are like 29, 30% success rate, which means what? Pitchers are 70% successful. But I will tell you, some of the biggest boo-hoo sessions I had were from pitchers, and I'm like, man, you have no idea. You're succeeding 70-something% of the time. Imagine failing 70% of the time. Yeah. I always found that, relationship quite interesting.
My dad played in the big leagues before I was born. He was a coach. And one of the things he would always tell me is like, dude, don't go complaining to an everyday player. He's like, you are a pitcher. You play 2 to 3 times a week. These guys are grinding it out every single day. If you go to complain to them, they got no sympathy for you.
We'll let you know how salty we are.
So I never did that. I'm gonna leave those guys alone. That's why I would room with position players on the road, which a lot of times pitchers didn't do that.
It's funny how the clubhouse will just kind of morph into its own little, like a 12-year-old third grade class. Everybody kind of morphs in their little groups, right?
Little cliques.
Pitchers usually with pitchers and position players usually rooming with position players. And then on the odd chance that you got lucky and somebody got called up or something, I'm sure you were getting the solo room because of your veteran status on a lot of these trips, right?
Yeah, right. No, always had a roommate. I was to the point in my career where, like say the trainer goes around and gets the rooming list, for your roommate at the hotel on the road. And I would tell them just, I'll leave my name to the very end and I'll take the player that, clearly nobody wanted to buddy with. Whoever that is. Maybe it's a new guy that nobody knows, or, maybe it's a guy that everyone does know, but doesn't want to room with him. So that's, early on, I wanted to be like, hey, this is my best friend on the team. But then I realized I'm like, no, man, I want to get to know everybody on the team. And I'm not going to lie, I had some tough roommates, but what came out of that was way better than avoiding it, and I also didn't have enough money to pay for my own room. So I needed the roommate. All right, now it's time to play a game, dude. We're going to play the hat game. Is that cool?
Oh, yes.
This is my first Nashville Sounds hat. I think it's from 2007. So anyway, that's why I got it for you.
Great logo.
So I'm going to reach in, pull out a topic, and it's going to hopefully jog a story that you can share with us.
Perfect.
Here we
Love
go.
it.
All right, what was your craziest off-season job?
Oof. Okay, really quickly, I get a job with UPS. The first day that I go to work for them, I am delivering packages for the driver. I'm the driver helper. We delivered 237 packages in like 3 hours because I was sprinting. I was running. Now, I didn't realize that I was paid by the hour, not the job. So
walking backwards up to the door.
Job. I'm like, dude, I'm crushing this. Like, I'm going to get a promotion. I might own UPS by the end of this off season. And we're done. And I'm like, hey, good job, man. We're done. And he goes, no. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, we got to go back and get more because you did it so fast. Like, bro, you're paid by the hour, right? And bing, it hit me. So I stopped running packages. I started walking packages to people's house. But I did that during the off season. I did so well that I got a call the next day. I got a call saying, hey, we want to promote you. We want to give you your own route. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness,
a promotion.
I can't drive one of those big trucks, man. Like, I can't do that. I can barely drive my car, well. For an entire off season, I made $18 an hour. I got rained on. I got snowed on. A couple dogs even urinated on me when I was trying to deliver packages. But I will say, it was an unbelievable experience because now every time I see a delivery person, I have a totally different perspective. I see them, I go to their truck to try and beat them because I know they've got like 500 of these, and maybe it'll make them feel better because I know what that feels like. I know
if you get up right now and you're running out the door, I'm just going to assume that Amazon truck or somebody's out there. Yeah,
a couple beeps, and I don't know if you've seen. I've kind of looked. There's a window out here, and
that's awesome. Yeah, I worked for like this leather factory one time that was moving. And I was like the only person that worked there where you got these big leather hides and I would fold them and I had to call the trucking company. And I was driving a forklift to like put these big pallets of leather on these trucks. And I didn't have a forklift license. And this factory was moving to one of the Carolinas. And this guy was, and I told him, I'm like, yeah, I need a, off-season job. I'm a, professional baseball player. But apparently I did really well. This guy was like recruiting me. He's like, hey, I'm going to bring you to South Carolina. I'm like, I'm not going to go to South Carolina. He was like, I'll pay you. How much do you make playing professional? And I told him, he's like, that's almost nothing. I was in, A ball or double A. So anyway, he wanted to, I was like, you clearly don't know how baseball works. But anyway, could be doing a podcast about leather, could do that. In 2019, in the big leagues with Arizona, you pitched. I assume you remember.
Oh, yes. I have a 0 earned run average in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Tied for best of all time in the major league. I think it's like 1 1/3 inning. I remember the outing in Arizona. That was the first time we were getting crushed. I told Torey Lavella, I said, look, I'll throw if you want me to. I'll throw strikes. It won't be a joke. Like, I'm taking it serious out there. And I went into the bullpen, got some warm-ups in, and then ran out. Everything is fun. Like, this is awesome. I can't believe it. This is all great. Throw my warm-up pitches. They throw the ball down. I get the ball back. Everything is like, this is it. This is a big check mark off the list until Javier Baez walks up to the plate. And he's like, the vantage point that I got for so many years is looking that way, like looking out. When you're a pitcher, I did have a lot more respect for pitchers after this outing. They're a lot closer than it appears. Like
their strike zone gets really small when a hitter walks up there.
And Javier Baez, he's with the Cubs, like 19. I think he's having a great year, and he swings pretty hard. Like I don't know if anybody knows. Like this guy's literally ripped the cover off the ball. Probably the hardest swinger in the big leagues, I would say. And I'm going up there with about a 72-mile-an-hour fastball. Like I have nothing to fool him. So everything was awesome until he walked up, and then I thought I could lose an ear or my life any second because I have nothing.
Do what I do. Throw and duck.
You throw and duck.
Yeah.
So that was fun. That was interesting, but it was way more scary than I thought it was going to be.
And you put up a 0. My bad.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, here's a fun one. You ever hit a home run off someone famous?
Yeah, Mark Burley. He got some Hall of Fame votes through a perfect game or complete game.
I think he threw a perfect game. Yeah.
Mark Burley was a good one. I'm trying to think of I almost got Scherzer, but this isn't the Hall of Close Enoughs. But
all right, I'm gonna find a good one here. Do you have any superstitions or like a pregame routine?
Nothing that was pretty crazy. I did get to the point where there was like a steak and rice meal that I would eat at like a very specific time.
Yeah.
Almost the exact same way. Superstitions, you have to have success, right? Most people don't do superstitions when it's been nothing but failure. And like I said, I was a backup catcher that played twice a week. So most of the time I'm trying to find the next superstition to get me on a roll.
Yeah.
It's never they would never stick long enough, to become superstitions. It was more or less hopes and praise. Like, hey, maybe if I put my left batting glove on first, I'll get a hit. I would do it. and I wouldn't get a hit. So then I'm trying another thing. And then, so superstitions is like something that over time has proven to work.
Yeah.
I never got to the point where over time it proved to work all the time. So I was always searching for the new ones. I will say the way I dressed was always the same. Like I dressed the same way. I had a very strict routine on like how I dressed.
But that's more so you don't like forget anything. You know, like you put your uniform on and you forget your belt or your sliders. Like there's a certain way you put the uniform on. It's a checklist as you're doing it.
Absolutely. But there were players that I played with that had things, which I'm sure you did. You kind of feel bad for them.
I think that comes with perspective too. You know, you start thinking, I don't have to do this. This isn't contingent on me playing well. But some guys are like, if I get a haircut and I don't get a hit, then that's the correlation. Stop cutting my hair. Ooh, speaking of hair, this is a good one. This one just says Bob Ross. I know that you're a Bob Ross fan. I even wore my Bob Ross shirt right
Did
here.
you? Yes.
Just for you. You do painting, right? Is that one of your hobbies? You still do that?
I wish I could just grab one really quick. Yeah. Well, as a youngster, I used to watch it with my grandfather, just stuff we would do. And I loved it. I loved the fact that he could take nothing, turn it into what looked like an absolute masterpiece for 30 minutes. And he made me believe that I could do it. Much, I'm sure, as anyone who's ever seen the show or watched an episode, you feel like he makes you feel like you can do it. I don't feel like I have a huge artistic side, or didn't, until I actually tried to do some of what he does. And I was actually pretty shocked when he says it's easy. And there are a lot of elements that are easy. Some of them is a bit of trickery that takes a minute to figure out. But if you generally follow kind of what he's saying and you have the right materials, you can do it, and it'll turn out okay. And I loved watching Bob Ross. You know, a lot of guys in big leagues, you have these uppers, right? We talk about kind of some guys get stuck on uppers and downers, and you're trying to find a way to kind of come down after a baseball game. Imagine like going to your favorite concert and you're jacked up even after the concert's over. Well, that's kind of like what you feel like, right? As a player, even in the minor leagues, you got to find a way to come down.
An hour after the game, you're all still jacked up on Mountain Dew.
Exactly.
I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew.
You want to find at least I did. I wanted to try and find a healthy way to come down. Because I wanted to be in bed. I wanted to get my rest. I was different that way. And I found out that getting home after I had my dinner and watching Bob Ross was a downer for me. You talk about routines. Like I got into a routine in the big leagues where my wife Brooke and I, we would finish the dinner that we had that I would bring home, and then we would turn on Bob and we would watch an episode or two, and just before you know it, he put you to sleep.
But in a good way. He was a
great way.
Downer in a good way. Yeah.
No, in a great way. But I mean, I've literally seen every single possible Bob Ross episode. I watched them all, and I've got a whole garage full of paintings that I've tried to do. But yeah, you talk about perspective. Like he has tremendous perspective. You could turn him on, look away, and just listen to what he's talking about, and it's amazing perspective. So I loved everything about that whole thing, and maybe it was subconsciously feeding me versus draining me. Yeah, painting, I love doing it, and it was something different, something totally different. I'm so athletic, balls and sports and kicking and whatever, and putting a paintbrush in my hand, I felt a little odd at first, but then it was cool. I was like tapping into a different area. I'd encourage you guys to try or pick up an instrument. Just allow your brain to go in different areas, and it'll help you athletically. It just
you need an outlet, a hobby that has nothing to do with baseball that can distract you. Because if you think about baseball all the time, it's not gonna end well.
No.
So Bob Ross, I always remember that. Is it surprising that I remember that?
That is really surprising, and you're prepared.
Yeah, I had to get the kids out the door, and then I was like, all right, I got Caleb coming on. I got to figure out. So that's why I got my Bob Ross. I got my Bob Ross shirt on, and then I got my bobblehead Bob Ross.
Yes.
As you know, we don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents, and that may be the true joy of painting is when you share it with other people.
Nice.
Wow.
All right. Let's see what else. What do you miss the most?
A lot of it, really. I miss the camaraderie. I miss traveling with Brooke, my wife, we liked experiencing moving, kind of the nomadic lifestyle. And I didn't realize how much that we enjoyed it. Of course, when you're in the middle of it, you're going, we got to lug around this. We got to do that. We got to find a place to live. But then you're out of it, and kind of the joy of finding other places and just experiencing different parts of the world. I'm going to veer off for a second. I know you do a lot of stuff with Milwaukee. You ever go through an airport or all these different airports and just look at the different places, just walk, like as you're walking through, look at all of the different gates. And I do this all the time. Look at all the gates, all these different places. And baseball has taken me to almost every single gate.
Right.
That is unbelievable. I started any airport that I go in now. I just, as I'm walking, I'm looking at all, and just, it's almost 90% of the gates I've been to city-wise because of baseball. And so I miss being able to travel for free, so to speak, or a reason to travel and see all these different places in the United States. I miss the competitiveness amongst my peers, being a teammate basically, and helping them get to where they want to be. As a catcher, I think we have that in our blood, like being a part of something that isn't about us, but we feel instrumental in helping them get there. I always found great pleasure in watching a guy learn how to throw a slider. We work on it. I'm trying to pump him up and give him confidence that he should throw that. He throws it. He has success. There's no greater feeling than watching like his reaction or his facial expressions once it does work, and the look of, man, that worked. Like, thank you so much. All of those emotions and feelings that you get being a catcher, that I miss that quite a bit. The camaraderie of the guys and just working with so many different guys. I think that's probably what you miss most. There's so much to like complain about, right? The travel, the food, and then you reflect on the good stuff. And it's really worth it. It's so worth it. All of those relationships, all of those experiences. It's 100% worth it.
And in being a catcher, you sign up to help others. Like, that's your job. Your job is to help the pitcher. Of course you're there to help the team, but it's such a special relationship, the pitcher-catcher relationship. I mean, I'm not going to say it's as close as like a marriage, of course, but the trust level and the communication is overwhelmingly huge, because just as men in general, we don't seek out to help others guys, in that way. And then all of a sudden it's like, your job is dependent on it, and you have to be good at it, and you have to enjoy it. I don't think I've ever had a catcher that's like, man, this is awful. Like, I hate. Their favorite part was us talking shop about trying to get better at the game of baseball.
Yeah. You have to care to do it at a high level at that position. You have to care and invest. And that's where some of those bus rides become shorter, is you kind of just want to throw the earphones in and just veg out on some Netflix show or something, or some, podcast where two old guys.
I got a date with Bob Ross, man. Back off.
There are times when you just want to like mellow out, but sometimes those are the best times to go and have your conversations. And it's not necessarily right after a pitch. Sometimes it could be 3 days after a pitch on a random bus trip from Bowie to Altoona, Pennsylvania. Yeah, go watch Bull Durham. If you've never seen the movie and you want to be a catcher, you're like, that's closer to real life than it is further away, I think, in terms of just the relationship of what it takes. Now, you got to build some trust and earn some trust, and that takes a while. But once you have that, it is so fulfilling to do it together. I can't tell you how many stories I have of just those moments where you walk up to a guy and you're like, will it into existence. You believe in him so much, and you convince him to believe in himself, and then he gets it done. And it's like, it's true real life movie.
It's magical.
Yeah. I remember Brad Brock getting out of a bases loaded jam in New York in extra innings and had Judge and Stanton, and it did not look good. No outs, bases loaded. We were winning by 1, and it's Judge, Stanton. And I just remember going out there and being like, hey, we got this. Like, I did not necessarily 100% believe it. I think I believed it like 50%. I had to go out there and basically convince me and him that we could do it. And anyways, we got it done, and it was we got a double play, and then we struck out Stanton. But it was we won the game. Game was over. Like we were on the road, and it was unbelievable. And even Brad talks about that. But I remember walking out there and being like, let's go. We got this. We just got to make some pitches, like, let's go. Yeah. This is our time. Like, get fired up.
Yeah, and you get to see it unfold. It's an interesting dynamic. I remember 2019, I'm in AAA. My catcher was Jet Bandy. If you remember Jet Bandy. Yes. Love Jet Bandy. I'll probably bring him up on every episode. I'm going to try to have him on here one time. I don't even know if he has a cell phone. That's kind of where he rolls. But I had been throwing to him. I was starting, and I'd thrown all these different starts throughout the season, a couple months. But what I did after every bullpen before I went out to the game, I would throw to Bandy and I'd walk up and I'm like, am I going to get somebody out today? And he'd be like, he'd say something like, yeah, man, let's go. Like he was. And one day I get done throwing the bullpen and I'm like, I don't know if that was that great or not, but I was like, I feel pretty good. I walk up and I'm like, Bandy, we going to get somebody out today? And he was like, I don't know, man. That wasn't that great coming out of your hand there. And I was like, oh man, I think he's right. And he said the right thing at the right time. And I ended up throwing a really good game that day because I think I was more focused on every pitch than I had maybe been in the past. If a catcher tells you your stuff's nasty today, you're going to let it eat and, not be as precise maybe. But for him, just, we joked around. He's a big jokester. But in that moment, I know it's kind of funny. He's like, basically like, I don't know if you're going to get anybody out today. You're throwing up a bunch of slop, that's going to get eaten up by these hitters. But he told me that. And I remember thinking, wow, I appreciate the honesty. He could have just lied. But he was like, hey, you need to tap into something else. It's a very amazing relationship, the pitcher and catcher.
Yeah, it's a great experience, a great sport. Run after it hard. If you can play professional baseball, even if it's just for 2-3 years, you got to give it a go. You learn so much.
Man, I appreciate it, dude. I'm going to let you go. I've taken so much of your time. I feel so bad, but it was wonderful catching up.
You too, Timmy. Thanks for having me.
That's all for this week's episode of the world's #1 most unneeded minor league baseball podcast in the world, Buses, Benches, and Baseball. I'd like to thank you for supporting this show because without you, I probably wouldn't do it and would most likely go back to spending more time with my children. Remember, you can watch on YouTube as well as listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And of course, be sure to follow on social media at DimTillard Show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for your chance to win a random giveaway prize that will leave you speechful because of how incredible it isn't. And you can also shop DimTillard merchandise, not sure why you would, but you can, at DimTillard.com under the link Buy My Crap. See you next time on Buses, Benches, and Baseball.
Thank you for tuning in to Buses, Benches, and Baseball, presented by DimTillard.